Welcome one and all, it's time for more lockdown hobby time, day 25, and we've got this magnificent beast out yet again, the Hellfane, and today we're going to be doing something very exciting. We are going to be drybrushing, the revolutionary technique that is not that revolutionary, but we're going to be doing it anyway, because it works, damn it. So, we've got three colours we're going to be dry brushing this big rock-based lava monstrosity with today. We've got cold grey, we've got wolf grey, and we've got white, which you can just about see there. Actually, you can get a pretty good idea since I do paint the tops of all my paints to show exactly what they are at a glance, and hopefully I'll be able to finish all of the rocky beast below the gold here. And then after that, I'll be able to actually start working on all the gold and the crew, of course. Three of those guys sitting off to one side, waiting for this stage to be complete. We've got Graham in the chat already. Hello there. And let's get rolling. So I'm going to take the lid off the water pot. And of course, everyone knows how to dry brush, so I don't really need to explain that too much. We're going to get cold grey first of all, and my new cold grey just arrived as well. Where's that? It's here somewhere. Oh, it's hiding behind the Hellfane over here. So that one just arrived, but this one hasn't quite expired and run out yet. So we're going to be using this one first. So last night all I did was tidy up around the lava veins to make sure that it was black everywhere it's supposed to be black. And now when I go in with the dry brush, it shouldn't, because it's not going to be the most heavy dry brush you've ever seen in your life, it shouldn't press into those lava veins at all, or at least too much. So that's how we're looking at the moment. And then once this layer is put on, there'll be a lighter dry brush of wolf grey, then a lighter dry brush still of white, just on the very corners, and then right at the end of that, there's going to be Nuln oil applied to all the black dry brushed grey parts, keeping out of the lava veins, of course, because that would hideously darken them, which is not the plan. So that's what we're going to do. So it's more of a precision dry brush more of a precision wash at the end than usual. May not get a chance to do that today. It depends how fast I can get through this dry brushing and let it dry, as it were. Because it is going to be pretty dry as it's on there, but we'll see. Let's start with cold grey. We've got Brad in the chat as well. Hello there. Now, do we want to get some extra light in this situation as well? Let's see here. Let's have this bad boy pointing at the scene as well. There's just wires in the way here. Okay, there you go. That should illuminate things nicely. Get these paints out of the way so you can actually see. And cold grey, here we go. Giving it a good shake. Now, the internet, my internet provider, has been having some issues in the last day or so. So, if this stream suddenly drops, then that will explain it. At which point I would obviously just have to wait and then come back. So don't panic if it drops out temporarily. Hopefully it doesn't. Hopefully it's all resolved, because there is, of course, the Andy and Rem show tonight as well, in about somewhere around 3.5 to 4 hours. We need to check the exact start time on that. But I've already been prepping things for that show. I've just got a few technical things to line up for it. So I'm getting rid of most of the paint off the brush here, and then we can start the dry brush on this rock. It's going to be an overall dry brush, so we're going to cover the whole thing, all the black rock, but we're not going to be too aggressive with it in the depth department, because obviously I don't want it soiling the lava veins that I spent so much time getting right yesterday. We don't want anything to be soiled, really, do we? Now, this is going to look very grey when it's finished, and that is not the final look that we're going for, which is why the Nuln Oil is going to be applied at the end. Because it's going to appear much lighter than the finished product will be before the Nuln Oil goes on there. And if you've seen my obsidian golems, then you'll know how it's going to look at the end. In fact, I think I've still got them lined up from yesterday. So that's what the rock is going to look like when it's finished. That is the plan. What's everyone else working on? I was going to say on this fine day, but it's not really a fine day. It's a bit chilly today compared to recently. I had to go on another shopping expedition today, which is of course perilous in these dangerous times we live in. Not as perilous for me as it is for the people working in the supermarkets, though, since they are there every day interacting with way more people than I have to. Brad is finishing up Immortal Guard Command Group. Excellent. I want to see plenty of Abyssal Dwarves out there in the world. Hopefully many of which were inspired by me and my video content, which is always good to know. So I'm being careful not to catch any of the model with the metal part of the brush here, because you can easily, with a rough process like this, like dry brushing, you can accidentally chip paint off if you're not careful with it. So this technique here is very similar to what I do when I'm painting animal fur. Except with the animal fur, if it's going to be black, then I would apply 2 layers of Nuln Oil at the end to dull down the grey highlights even more. But with rock, because it's supposed to be pointy and jagged and it's not supposed to look black exactly, not completely black anyway, so 1 coat of Nuln Oil will be enough for this beast. This is the stage of the model where it actually starts to look like good progress has been made, and it's starting to look something like the way it's going to be when it's finished. Once the lava veins went on there, it really starts to look like something good is happening. So hopefully you can see the change that's taking place because of all the lights pointed at this bad boy. I know some people on their live streams have much better lighting setup than I do, so you can see in more detail what they're doing, but too bad. I did have some really nice professional like YouTube lighting, but I decided to sell them because I wasn't really using it. It's mainly for green screen purposes, to get a nice even light on the green screen, and since I sold the green screen as well, I thought, what's the point keeping these lights around? They're just taking up a lot of space. I'm not using them anymore. I used to be a fan of green screen, but it started getting on my nerves, and I just don't like how it looks anymore. I think it's a bit early 2010s. And of course, it's very hip and trendy to have a shelf in the background with stuff on it. So I decided to go that route instead. Painting the Sinister Underbelly now. I don't know what's sinister about it. This is going to be the longest dry brushing phase because this is the colour that's going everywhere. The others are going to be more focused, or just a lighter dry brush in general. The next one is going to just be a lighter all over brush, and the white is going to be very light indeed. Only on corners and very gently draped over everywhere else, so it's barely going to leave a mark in some places. There's some places I just don't need to catch with the dry brush at all. Like there's certain spots on the underbelly that are never going to be seen. And even if they were seen, the angle you'd have to tilt it to, realistically, no light would ever reach that anyway. So it shouldn't be shiny. It should just be nice and dark. Almost done with this colour now. This isn't a very long process at all. Oh my god, I've just spotted a bit that isn't black enough. The inside of one of the toes that would never be seen by a human eye, probably. But I think I'm still going to go in with black and fix that in a moment. Because I know it's there. Anyone else working on anything exciting today? I assume everyone's looking forward to the Andy and Rem show tonight. What the Hell Is That will be back. The ever popular segment. And I'll start promoting that show, putting together the Facebook posts and whatnot after this. Hopefully my internet issues don't continue tonight, because the Andy and Rem show would be a terrible time to have internet connectivity problems. since we're probably going to attract a decent audience again. There's a little bit of grey that I want to do that hasn't really been covered, so I'm going to pour a little bit more out onto the wet palette here. And even if I do too much, it'll still be okay on that palette for a few days, so I might be able to use it for something else. Yeah, I think that'll do for the grey. Hopefully you can see that the colour has significantly changed now, especially in this light that really shows off the colours. Makes them much more obvious, this lighting here. So I'm going to wash off this brush and then we'll go into the next dry brush very shortly. But before that, I did spot that little bit of gold on the inside of one of the toes that I'm going to fix with black. And there is some black on the palette still from yesterday. So let's just grab a brush. Let's have this bad boy. Okay, so the toe is under here. On the inside of this toe that you can't see, there's a bit of gold that's way too gold for my liking. So let's fix that. If anyone ever sees that, I'll be impressed. But it could drive me nuts, so it has to be fixed. Is there some on the other toe as well, on the inside there? There we go. Let's wash this one off. So, preemptively, if anyone wants to submit any nerd confessions to the Andy and Rem show tonight, because that is another segment that we'll be doing, in which we'll be assessing how much of a nerd you are based on some kind of nerd-based, I said based a lot there, some kind of nerd-based confession. For example, I own 50 unopened 1990 Space Marine squads, and every day I light a candle next to them and pray to the Emperor, something like that. That would get you quite a few points. If you want to submit them in advance, then you can go to the Andy and Rem Show Facebook group, which you can just find by typing the Andy and Rem Show into Facebook, and you could submit them as a post, and they won't appear on there because posts have to be approved, and I won't approve them. I'll just make a note of the confession so it'll be completely anonymous, and you can, if you want it to be anonymous, that is. If you want it to be publicly known that it was you, then feel free to put your name on it as well, so I'll know. I'll be able to see your name either way, but the rest of the world won't, so I'll just read it out as it is. But I'll put out a post about that later, but if anyone wants to get theirs in early and guarantee that yours will be featured on the show, then you could do that anytime in the next couple of hours. We've got a lot of stuff to look at on that show tonight, though. Because there are a few things we never looked at on the show because we just weren't doing shows. For example, the Age of Sigmar armies, there's the cow-worshipping elves, there's the... I don't think we've looked at the Bone Reapers. think the last time we did a show before last week was the Gloom Spike Gits. There has been a huge surge in dislikes on my channel though since the return of the Andy and Rem show. So don't forget to like these videos. It doesn't really do much liking or disliking one or the other, but if people come onto a video and they see that it's got a lot of likes, then maybe they'll be more inclined to watch it all the way through. I don't know. Some kind of psychological impact it probably has. So, what do we want now? We want to go for the Wolf Grey, which is grey, but it's pretty damn light. So this is going to be the next dry brush. This is going to be pretty much all over, but lighter, not as heavily pressed in as the darker grey. Because otherwise there'd be no point. If you're just going to dry brush equally heavy each time, then you might as well just start with the lightest colour. We want to work up to that colour though. So giving it a good shake. Squeezing a bit out. And let's get this sucker rolling. Another thing you can do, if there's anything you want to be discussed tonight on the Andy and Rem show, preferably Warhammer related in some way, then let me know, and it can be brought up, assuming it's relevant. So here we go, the next stage. Same technique, but not being pressed as deeply in there. Just keeping it to the areas that are going to be lighter. And it doesn't matter if it looks really bright after this, because we've still got more stages to go that will darken it later on. I'm applying this nowhere near as heavily as the previous colour. See if you can tell the difference already. Let's see. Yeah, that side does look a bit brighter, doesn't it? Than that side. So I think you get the idea immediately. And then the white dry brush is just going to be for the very corners. So this is going to be very quick. And the other side. You know what I forgot to do actually? I've forgotten to lower my seat. I don't want to be hunched over too much, so here we go, we're going down. So we're not covering the whole thing this time, we're just going onto the raised areas, and then the white will just be for the tips and corners, and that will be coming next. I actually don't like how the models look at the end of the dry brushing phase, which is why that's not the final step. I think they end up looking quite dirty and weird. But after the null oil step, it looks much more toned down and just much better in general, I think. Okay, that's the end of that colour. Steve is with us. You haven't missed too much, just a bit of dry brushing on the Hellfane. Just washing off the brush before the final dry brush of white, and then we'll be going in with the null oil. Once all that's fully dry. Shouldn't take a dry brush too long to dry, in theory. And I was also talking about tonight being the Andy and Rem Show's glorious second episode of the return. I suppose I could have called it Season 2. Technically, Season 1 was about 2 years long and had over 100 episodes. It must be like an American season on TV, where there's like 28 episodes sometimes. Not everything that I've noticed. I think it depends which TV network originally did it. Some of them you seem to get like 6 episodes for the first season, which is like a very British number for something on TV, and then they eventually go up to some obscene number. Like American sitcoms and drama, you'll see like 250 episodes, and then you look at some of the classic British ones and see, oh, 12 episodes, 18 episodes, and that was it. Steve says, what time tonight might have to drop in? The Andy and Rem show will be sometime around 9 or 9:30, so in about 3 hours or 3.5 hours for anyone not in this time zone. So I know the world is itching for that content, and we're itching to scratch everybody's itch. Yeah, let's go with that. Sounds good to me. So, anything else to show off while I'm waiting to apply this white? Don't think so, really. You can actually see a snack in camera shots. I've just spotted it. So I might as well show it you anyway. It's a sesame snack. Very tasty. I'm not sure what the country of origin is. Let's see. Poland, apparently. Because here we have sesame snaps, except not every shop actually sells those. But those are almost identical. But Polish. I don't know if you can taste the Polishness of them. So we're going to be doing the white dry brush now, just on the very tips and edges of everything. Very lightly. So these will be the ultimate highlights before everything gets toned down significantly. Have we already got some white on here? I think we have actually. We don't need to pour any out. We've got some that's kind of merging into the yellow here, so let's be careful with that. Wiping most of that off on this piece of newspaper. And in we go. Just very lightly over the pointiest bits. The Abyssal Dwarves just have way too much time on their hands to be building things like this, don't they? How'd you even come up with a lava rhino? Okay, we're almost done with the white already. Like I said, just on the very tips and edges of everything and the very pointiest parts. Cheekbones. Not much white underneath at all, just on the tip of this big, like, underhanging part, since that's the part that'll actually show. And done. So that is the rock complete, apart from the null oil step, which will be next, which will tone everything down nicely and tie it all together. Because at the moment it looks a little bit messy, which is how it always does before the null oil step. So that's a crucial point in the dry brushing. So I found that dry brushing brighter than you want it to be, and then toning it down with a wash can be more effective than starting off just dry brushing darker. Because the wash, it doesn't just darken it. It's like a common layer on top of it that just brings all the colours slightly closer together. And it stops it looking, it's difficult to describe. Maybe dry brushing can look a bit powdery, perhaps, but once you put the wash on top of it, that gets rid of that effect. Something like that. I'm sure anyone that's experimented with washes over dry brushing will understand. Steve says, rock looking good. It sure is, but it's going to look even better. It looks really good on the camera, actually, because I've got a very bright light pointing at it, so it shows off the edges very well. Almost like a cartoon. Under normal lighting, it wouldn't look exactly like this. So after the null oil is applied there, the next step is going to be to just let it dry, and that'll be the rock completed then, and then the next time, probably tomorrow, we'll be moving on to the gold, which is very exciting. All the metallics then, which again isn't the longest stage. It's longer than this. It's not that difficult, it's just a lot of it. And certain parts of it will be difficult. For example, you've got all these patterns on here, and I've chosen to leave all of this as gold, which means that in order to create some kind of variety of colour, I'm going to have to make some areas that are shiny. And to do that, when I've finished all the other gold highlights, there's going to be silver in little precise areas. Let's point at that with something so I can show you where it's going to go. So, for example, if I want this bit to be shiny here, just keep painting down this detail in silver and run it all the way down this here. So it would be like a silver stripe all the way up there, which sounds really weird, but it looks good when it's finished. And let's see if I can find an example in my documents and show you. There's quite good examples on my half-breeds and immortal guard, I think. So I'm gonna crack those pictures open and see which ones are going to be best to illustrate the point. Let's see here. Okay, there's a good one. Let's just get it loaded up in here. Okay, this one. This image here. I'm going to bring up good old Mr. Arrow, actually, from my battle reports. So you can actually see what I'm talking about. Okay, so it's all just very gold, but it's been highlighted. And then you can see there's actually a gold shiny stripe down here, starting off at this point here. And it works its way down across the armor, because there's a lot of texture in that armor. So it seems silly not to do something with it. And let's see, can you see any on him as well? You can see the tips of those teeth are silver, but there's also a bit on the nose, which then continues down here and continues down here. So just trying to give the impression that part of it is shiny, and it doesn't look like just a silver stripe. If you're doing it on a big flat surface, it can look that way. So I like to do it over things like this, where you've got something to break it up. So it just looks like that bit is catching the light. That's the intent anyway. Hopefully it looks that way to other people. And you can actually see it in the background on this guy as well. The out of focus guy, you can see the same thing. Just a silver line, and it just looks like he's shiny rather than a stripe. Again though, if you're doing it on a big flat area, it can just look like a stripe, so you've got to be careful. Okay. Hopefully, that's the kind of tip that I would have liked to see at some point. The tips have probably been out there, I just wasn't looking for them. But that's the kind of thing that elevated my metal painting up a level. If you compare my Abyssal Dwarves to my Stormcast Eternals, which are an equally gold army, but the Stormcast Eternals just don't look quite as good. And that's because we've got things like a silver highlight strategically applied to the Abyssal Dwarves, which is something that the Stormcast don't have. They still look nice, but I think it pushes the metals up a level when you add that extra highlight, if it's correctly applied and not overdone. In some models it looks better than others. Sometimes it doesn't look good up close either, because you're just seeing a blob of silver sometimes. When you zoom right in there, you're thinking, why is that there? But on the battlefield, more often than not, it works, I think. So we're just going to give this a little bit longer before we null oil it up. You don't want null oil applied while it's still got any kind of wetness to the paint, or it'll just turn into a weird spludge and it'll be horrible. Especially when we're going with precision as well, because I don't want it to drop into the lava cracks. So if it goes in there, that's going to darken them significantly, which is something we do not want. So let's put the Hellfane to one side for now then while we're waiting for that, and let's look at something else. I could actually start painting the beards, because there's some black on the palette there, so I could do their beards now. I'm thinking their cloaks, the bits of fabric garment, are going to be orange, because there's not going to be much orange on the Hellfane otherwise, and we want a little bit of it represented in there. The gloves, probably black as well as the beards. The weapons, I'm not sure about doing the glove and the stick both black. Steve ordered himself one of those wet palettes today. A wise decision, I think. They're not actually that expensive, are they, when you compare it to some of the other brands? And I think that the more you pay, you really want some kind of snazzy accessories with it, don't you, with a wet palette? Because really, it's pretty simple, and you could make one yourself. You just wouldn't have all the kind of paper you would need straight away. Stu is looking forward to the show tonight. Yes, the world is on the edge of its seat awaiting Andy and Rem Season 2, Episode 2. This is where the spice really hits in, or kicks in, should I say. And I was mentioning earlier, when there were less people here, if anyone wants to get in a nerd confession for the Nerd Confessions segment, which Mr. Remington is insisting we bring back, then submit it as a post on the Andy and Rem Show Facebook group. Or you could just message it to me on Twitter, perhaps. and then I will collect all those and we'll go through those on the show. You can, if you want them to be anonymous, you can just say that they are anonymous, and I won't reveal the name. If you really are that ashamed of something that you've done that's ultimately in the realm of nerddom. So, do we want to maybe do the gloves orange and the sticks black? Because it might look weird, a black glove gripping a black stick. Might not be ideal. It's quite a hefty piece, this stick. So I'm thinking maybe orange gloves and fabric, black boots, black stick. Okay, let's paint the beards in then. And I think we're going to need a small brush for this because those beards are teeny tiny. We might even need the fine detail brush here. Yes, the price of wet pellets, definitely a reason to go for them. I wouldn't have bought one if they were any more expensive. Where did you order yours from, Steve? I got mine from Mantic, since they're one of the retailers that are still active at the moment, and they do stock the Army Painter wet palette. So I'm going to get a little bit more black out here, because I don't want it to be too dry or thick on the fine detail brush, and this stuff is starting to dry up a little bit. So let's just splodge a bit more in there. And I'm going to get a teeny tiny just moistening of the tip of the brush here with water. Not bodily fluids. I know some people have been known to use saliva in their painting. There's one thing I can recommend heartily, it's a moist tip. It's got a bit of moustache action going on here as well. Very little, fiddly little facial features I'm painting here. So there's likely to be some mistakes made. Just got to keep the number of mistakes down to minimize the cleanup job later. Okay, one beard down. Let's get him right up there. Where's the sweet spot for focusing on this beard? There you go. next. Okay, this guy doesn't have much of a visible beard because he's quite heavily helmeted up, but there is a bit to work with. He's definitely got a moustache. I don't know if there's a clan of beardless dwarves anywhere in the world of Panithor. Actually, I think he's pretty much just moustache. Not seeing any beard down below it at all. His helmet's just too big and juicy, so there's no space for the hair to escape. Okay, he's just Mr. Mustache, essentially. And this guy's got quite a decent beard on him to work with. Steve also ordered a dwarf steel juggernaut to get the free postage. Yeah, that's always the way, isn't it? You want to buy something that's just below the threshold for free postage, so you got to chuck something else in there as well. And why not? Most of the companies have lowered their free postage threshold if they're still trading at this time. Which is more than reasonable, I think. Yeah, this guy definitely wins the beard competition from the crew. And the little moustache as well. And let's see other kinds of dwarves that have different kinds of facial hair representing their different role in society. Like certain ones of them could just have huge curly moustaches instead, and it represents that they are from a particular class or rank. Okay, another beard done. I mean, look at this thing. He definitely wins the beard contest. Let's see. Where's the sweet spot? There we go. Looking a bit shiny at the moment. And let's soap down this brush a bit. It's fine detail, so I'm actually being careful with it for a change. Okay. Let's put that bad boy away. And next, we're going to need Nuln oil on the Citadel paint holder, which I'm finding very handy. My desk is being overrun by paints, though. I mean, if we look down a bit, there's just paints everywhere. So I am looking into getting a paint rack. Probably going to be to fit dropper bottles, because most of my paints now are game colour from Vallejo. And I could easily leave all my Citadel paints on the table, because I don't have... Well, I've got a lot of them, but the number's dwindling, because I don't buy regular colours in Citadel anymore. I want everything in dropper bottles now. So looking for some nice shelves that I can put up right behind where the camera is, with little slots for the paints to go in. And that's going to be a good day when that happens. So just going to give him another moment or two before we start nulling him up. And in the meantime, for anyone that hasn't seen these guys lately, they are completed. They're just waiting for bases now. These are my converted Dread Fiends for my Night Stalker army. This is the second one I did. So they're a bit pinky. They've got ghostly green facial hair and hair on the top there. And they've got green ooze coming out of their mouths. Made from a Kings of War giant head and a Hellboy frog monster. And this guy is the first one I did. He's also completed now. Same kind of thing, he's just got a lot more hair going on. And this guy's marginally shorter actually, because the way I've positioned the head, he's kind of looking downwards a bit, whereas the other guy's more extended. So, Mr. Hellfane, come to the party, if you will. So he says, yeah, I'm on the same paint front now, just use GW for contrast and washes. I use GW for contrast, shades, and technical paints. So blood for the blood god, and gloss varnish, hard coat. What else? My favourite paint that I use a lot of actually is this one. I actually bought several pots of this a while ago because I was using it so much. I use it just like a blue wash, but it is technically a glaze, but I use it all the time. It works very nicely. Let's see, Brad says, did you get the two-player starter set and then sell the Northern Alliance, or did you just get the Stalker Army box? I didn't actually do either of those things. I was given 5 Vanguard Night Stalker starter sets and 1 booster set by someone that just had a lot of them and didn't want them. And I think I'd given him something a while ago, and I think he was basically paying back the generosity, something like that. But I think I ended up getting more out of it. I believe I only gave him a Dead Zone book. And that's accounted for a lot of what I've got. So the 1 booster contains like the Mind Screech, I think it is, and there's a couple of characters in there as well. And then I did a trade recently and got rid of a lot of my random fantasy miniatures, which I put into a random box, and traded those for a big pile of scarecrows. So I've got about 60 in a box now, on top of the 15 that I'd already assembled. And there's also a few other things in there as well. There's a few of these guys, which I think are phantoms, which I've already got a few of those, so I should have enough for a full unit now. And also the pieces for the Terror. I think it's called the Terror. But I probably will get the Night Stalkers mega army at some point as well, because that's got a lot of juicy stuff in it that I could use. And in addition to that, obviously I've got my Shadow Hulk, which is made from a combination of the Kings of War Giant, which I got for attending the last Clash of Kings. I think everybody got one. And the other parts are all just things I had lying around. So tentacles, which are from a Hellboy tentacle-based creature of some kind. There's arms that have come from different Mantic kits. Most of the stuff on here is Mantic. There's a Dead Zone Plague Swarm bit crawling into that mouth and crawling out of this dragon head, which is on his hand, which is from the Kings of War dragon. There's random Night Stalker tentacles on it from the Scarecrow kit. Lots of faces put on it as well, which are made from molds that I took of other miniatures' faces, like giant heads. So these three monsters that I'm starting the army with were not a very expensive start. And then I've got another few bits lying around in my bits box waiting to be used, like this, which is from Dead Zone. I think that's going to make a fine addition to something in the Night Stalker army. Maybe I'll just use it as a head or as a growth out of something. I did look at the two-player starter box, but I didn't really want to go through the hassle of selling the Northern Alliance out of it. And the stuff that you get in there, I would like to get it. If anyone told me right now that they would like very much the Northern Alliance half of the starter box, I would possibly go for it, because I would like to get the softback rulebook as well. But my current plan is to get the Night Stalkers mega army instead. We'll see, plans can change. So we're going to be dry brushing now. We've dry brushed already, we're going to be washing now with Nuln Oil. And this is going to require some precision, because I don't want it to go into the lava cracks at all. So I'm going to go around very slowly and carefully with not too big a brush and just paint onto the rocks with it. We don't want it sinking into those crevices. If it does sink in there a little bit, it shouldn't matter too much. But if it sinks in too much, then it would mean I'm going to have to get a fine detail brush out later and maybe put some more colour into the lava, which is not good because I like how it looks at the moment. So we're going to be very careful with this Nuln Oil and hope not to get too much in the crevices. Giving it a good shake. Let's give it a good shake and see what falls out. Which brush will I use for this? I think that's a decently pointed brush. Could use this one. Is it thick enough though? I don't think we need it to be that thin, in fact. Let's try. What about Citadel layer brush? That's fairly thin. Yeah, let's try with this. Let's see how it goes. So we're going to start on this side. The most important part to hit are just the raised corners that are currently very brightly highlighted with the dry brushing, because we want to tone it down and tie all those colours together. And we won't really get the full effect until it's dry. I know I'm doing a part that you can't really see right now, but too bad. Deal with it. I keep saying I need to have the camera on the other side, and that is true. Since I'm right-handed, you would be able to see a lot more. If the police were to find my body somewhere, they would probably assume that I was left-handed because I wear my watch on my right hand, like a freak. That's what Columbo would think anyway. The two-player starter set for Kings of War does look like good value though. So if I need more than comes in the Night Stalker Mega Box, then I would be tempted. But I would have to find someone who wants the Northern Alliance first, because I don't think I would be doing Northern Alliance. I did have one Northern Alliance model lying around, but I think that went in my mystery fantasy box that has now been traded away. Pretty much finished the back leg, and we're on to the buttocks and other leg now. It's weird using a shade like this and avoiding crevices. That's usually the place you're trying to pick out. So it does require some patience and precision. Obviously, for this technique, not all the places you're going to be dry brushing and washing over are going to have lava veins running through them, so there will be easier models to do it on than this. I do really like the way it looks when it's dry though, so I think it's worth the extra effort. I know Night Stalkers are one of the current more popular armies because obviously they're the hot new thing, and there are some nice original IP from Mantic there, and with them coming in the starter box, probably going to be quite widely played in the coming couple of years. And with Abyssal Dwarves being the subject of new models as well, two armies that I'm looking at probably playing the most over the next few years are likely to be quite popular, which for someone like me who does videos on all my games is probably a good thing, because more people would be interested in watching my battle reports then to pick up the tactical insight or learn from any horrendous mistakes. I'm proud of my Abyssal Dwarves. More so than any of my other Kings of War armies thus far. I've put more effort into painting them than I have in any of the others in the past. So hopefully that shows. I haven't won any Best Painted awards for them yet, although technically I did because it was a combined win. I won, but so did somebody else. We both got the same number of votes, and the other person got the trophy because I finished higher and I already got a placing trophy, which I think is fair. I did win a Best Army award with my League of Rordia a while ago, but it certainly wasn't the best painted army. But that army just has a lot of unique elements to it. So the first few times you see it, I think it's going to be more impressive, the Rordia. Because there aren't many people out there with skeleton halfling armies. Best painted is a difficult thing to win anyway, because even if you're really good, it might just so happen that all the tournaments you attend are also attended by someone who's a complete painting maestro. And it's not like playing the game itself, where even if you turn up and there's the best player in the world there, on that day they could just roll a load of double ones and not win. Whereas with painting, unless they have a car crash on the way and their army gets destroyed or they fall down the stairs with it, you've pretty much got no chance. I think we've done this entire side now. So let's swing back over to this side. I think just done the back leg here. This isn't going to be the longest episode of Lockdown Hobby Time, but it's already over an hour, so it's still not going to be the shortest. But I'm not going to be here for 2 hours because I've got to prepare for the Indian Rim show tonight. Which is, of course, a flagship broadcast in the wargaming world. And for anyone who's a Kings of War nut and thinks that this is madness, that there's Warhammer-based content going on instead, I would say, don't worry, it's not going to affect my Kings of War output whatsoever. If anything, it could actually increase it if I manage to persuade Mr. Remington to get into Kings of War. I don't think it would take too much. Maybe once he's sold some of his 10 different Age of Sigmar armies. He might be down to about 5 now, actually. I might be doing him a disservice there. He's already sold some of them. He's currently trying to sell his what they call Night Haunt, the ghostly undead army. Okay, that might be all the Nuln oiling done. You can absolutely sure. Seems that way. Anywhere underneath that's not been touched that could do with a bit more. Don't forget the toes, obviously. Okay, I think that is done. So when that's fully dry, you'll get a proper idea of what the rock's going to look like. Steve says, I enjoyed the show last week, even though I have no interest in AOS, and yes, Rem really needs to play Kings of War. I'll keep whispering in chat. Yes, he does. I might challenge him to an online game of Kings of War via webcam. Because he has played it once before, but that was quite a few years ago. So we need to drag him back in now. So, has this stream quality been good enough? There's not been any weird cutouts or silence from an internet perspective? Because my provider was having lots of issues yesterday. It seemed like a countrywide thing for Virgin Media. There was lots of outages and temporary blips. So it was messing up people's TV and their internet connections. So hopefully that's all resolved, because the last thing we want is being in the middle of a live broadcast later on and my connection dropping out. But it seems to be alright. It does mean that I haven't risked doing any online gaming the last day or two, because that would be annoying to drop out for a few seconds and get killed in that situation. So when this Nuln Oil is dry, I'm going to take a picture of the progress and I'm going to post it on Twitter so you can get a good look at how he appears now that he's been all oiled up. And that will be the rock totally complete then. It's hard to tell on this broadcast exactly how it looks. Let's see if it helps if I hide this light. Not really. It needs to be in a brighter area, and I'm down in a corner here with very bright lights shining on this. Stu Rat's internet was out for hours yesterday, and he's on another continent. Well, I imagine there's more demand for internet now than ever before, probably, with lots of people in lockdown inside their own homes, unable to reach the outside world. Steve says that some of my old models appeared in the 3rd edition Warhammer rulebook, some halflings and archers. I wish I still had all my old rulebooks. The only things I've actually kept from the old days are all my dwarf books. So I've got every dwarf army book, starting with the one that had I think it's the king being carried into battle on the cover. It's a blue book. I think that's the first one I've got, and then after that I've got the one with the king on shield. There's like shield bearers holding him up. I think that's the next one. And then the one after that, I can't even remember what was on the cover of that one, but that was the last one they did. So I can't remember if it's 3 or 4 I've got. And then I've also got the Caradron Overlords book for Age of Sigmar, which is kind of the closest thing we've got to dwarves. There's them and the Fire Slayers, obviously. But those are the only thing I kept just because it was the army I was holding on to. And there were the few books that I actually enjoyed going back and looking through and reading bits of. I especially like the bit about the dwarf language where you can formulate names that mean things in their language. I always found that interesting. And they're one of the more fascinating races I always found in the old world. Steve, you'll have to, if you've still got the rule book that your miniatures are in, you'll have to take a picture of some of that and post it on my Facebook group if you want, so people can see it. That would be interesting. So I think I'm going to wrap this one up. Obviously, plenty still to do on the Hellfane, but we're making good, solid progress on it. All the rock part is completely done now, unless I make some mistake and chip paint off it somehow in handling the rest of it, or if some of the gold strays onto the black, which it may well do. If it does, then it's not going to be too ridiculous to repair because all those steps were very quick and easy, especially over a limited part of the model. And tomorrow we're going to be moving on to the gold parts of the Hellfane, which may well include the armour of the crew as well. And the gold process, you may have seen that. You've seen that a little bit because there was some gold on my grotesques, but there wasn't a lot. You haven't seen it over a large area before. So you'll be able to see how that goes down. And I have to decide if all of those parts on the Hellfane are going to remain gold, or whether some of it's going to be broken up with a bit of other colour in there as well. Well, you'll have to tell someone that does have the book the appropriate section and they can take a picture of it for you. That would be cool to see. Okay, time to wrap this one up. I'll be back in a couple of hours, or maybe 2.5 hours, for the Andy and Rem show. Don't forget to tune in for that. In the meantime, don't forget to like this video, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't for some ungodly reason. And don't forget to check out my Facebook group and social media and all the fundraising links in the description. And I will just say ta-ta for now, because I will be back later tonight with the Andy and Rem show. Be there or be square.